Okay. Good morning. We're holding on 112. Tanur Rabbanan. See that? 112. What is it supposed to be today? Oh, how long does it go? It goes until I think 119. Yeah. So officially, I think by Friday we're supposed to be finished. We're 3 pages behind. We'll probably end up finishing Sunday, and we'll start on Monday. Probably. We'll make a CM probably Sunday night. I mean, I'll try to move a little bit, but nevertheless, let's plan for Sunday night CM. All right, and then I'm going to be out of town Friday and Sunday, so someone's going to finish the Masechta. But I'll be back Sunday night. Okay. Thank Hashem that they're able to learn Torah every day. Most of our learning, we should have basic English immediately. Okay, so we start Tanur Rabbanan. You want me to find it here? Yeah. Tanur Rabbanan, right there. It's top resh stands for Tanur Rabbanan. What's wrong? A goizel umaychel espanav, someone that steals and he feeds what he stole to his kids. Patur milashalim. The children don't have to pay. They don't have to pay for what their father stole. The father passed away and they inherit the estate. They don't have to pay it. But if he left it in front of them and he died, then gedolim chayavim l'shalom. If they're adults, they need to give it back. They need to pay. And ketanim is paturim, and ketanim, but the children, they're exempt. Paturim l'shalom, they don't have to pay. Now we're going to see soon that this is a machlekes simchas in the Rabbanan regarding the children. The children need to repay what their father. This would be following the opinion of some. As we'll see. Let's say the adult children, inheritors, say, we don't know what arrangements our father has made with you, what calculations, and so therefore you're asking us for the money that our father stole, but maybe there were some arrangements that you had, maybe something you worked something out, I don't know exactly. They say that, then they're exempt. Kamara asks, how does that work? If they say we don't know, then they get exempt. Don't we have a rule? Bari v'shema bari adif. Whenever you have one person that's definite, another person that's maybe, so the definite wins. So here they're saying we don't know, and this guy's saying your father stole. So if they have to pay, if they're adults, they would have to pay. How can they just get out of it by saying we don't know? Amar Rava says Hachi Kamma Daf. What really happened was Gedolim Shamru Yoidimanu Cheshbon Shechashav Avinu Imach. Let's say they say no. They claim that we know what our father arranged, and he doesn't owe you anything. He already paid you back. We have the information about this. So then it's bari ubari. You want to extract money, you're going to have to bring a better proof. So they're going to be exempt. Tani Yidach. You have another brayso. It's very similar. I think there's going to be one detail different. There's a base over there. Someone that stole, and then he feeds it to his children, and he dies. The children don't have to pay for what their father stole. Let's say the father died and he left it in front of them, and they used up the stolen money. Now we're learning something different. Now we're learning that the children also have to pay if it was left intact when he died. Mara asks, Tanami Mechayvi, children have to pay. Said before, that they don't have to pay, the children don't have to pay. And the Gemara has a logic. One second. What really happened here was that the father had stolen and then he dies. Now the children end up taking the stolen property. Now what they're doing is they're damaging some property that they now owe, that they will now owe to the original owner. Now we had a rule that when children cause damage, we said pigiyas and ra, any interaction with children or with women, we said was only going to cause a financial loss. Whether you harm them, you have to pay them, and if they harm you, they don't have to pay you. So here, the children are causing damage, and you're telling me that they do have to pay. Why do they have to pay this? Just the regular damage that they're doing. The father left it intact, and they damaged it. They ate it. So why should they have to pay? The children don't have to pay. Amar of Papa hachi kamar. Papa says, "Hiniach lifnei v'adayin layachlum." It's talking about when they didn't damage it at all. It's still intact. Then ben gedalim ben ktanim chayavim. Then the children have to pay, have to give it back. Okay. Now we're going to say that this is the opinion of the Rabbanan that argue on Sumchus, and Sumchus is going to say that children are actually exempt. Amar Rava. Rava says, "Hiniach lehem aviyam parashuula." If the father had borrowed a cow and then he died, now the children are using the cow that the father had borrowed. It says Mishtamshim ba'kol yimei shelasa. He borrowed it for a month, and he died. So the children can use it the other 2 weeks, until the borrowing time is up. What happens now? Are they considered regular borrowers? Mesa, if the cow dies, ain't chayavim b'insa. They don't have the real responsibility that the father had, who was the real father. The father was the borrower. He accepted responsibility. This children don't have the same responsibility as the father. In other words, if something unpreventable circumstances, right, if that occurs, they're going to be exempt from paying that. You can't be negligent or anything, but if it's an einus, they're going to be exempt. Now Rashi explains why were they exempt. Rashi says they never accepted on themselves this sort of guarding. It's not theirs. They have to be careful with it, but they never accepted. They weren't the borrowers that accepted. A borrower accepts these extra responsibilities. They didn't borrow it, but they have certain responsibilities, but not the full responsibility of a borrower. I think that they own it. Right. Right. Yeah, that could be a problem. Now, Kasvurim Shalaviyami. Let's say they actually thought that it was the father's. And they shechted it and they ate it. What happens when someone shechts an animal that was stolen? So 4 or 5 times, but over here it's not going to be 4 or 5 times. This wasn't really stolen. This was just borrowed. There is a way when a shemer chinam turns the item into a stolen item by claiming that it was stolen to exempt himself, and because he's pater, so it becomes a toyen tanas ganav. If he claims the claim that it was stolen, then he becomes like a ganav, and he would have to pay double, and he would have to pay 4 or 5. That was machlekes if he had to pay Ravavo, whatever. If he had to pay 4 or 5 times. But over here, there was no claim. They didn't claim that it was stolen. So no, the question is just paying back. It was a borrowed item, and they damaged it. They shechted it. Okay. They have to pay back the cheaper price for meat. Now, the cheaper price is apparently 1/3 off. If they would have known that this was an animal that was borrowed, then they probably never would have shechted it. because of the information, they didn't have all the information, so we can't claim the full price for the meat. We give them the cheaper price for meat, the wholesale price, not the retail price. If the father left property, then they have to pay it. Then they have to pay. Now, there's two possibilities what this is referring to. One possibility was case number one, where the father left a borrowed cow, and we said that they're not responsible for inus, unpreventable circumstances. That was only the borrower himself was responsible for that. Now it comes along the Rava's last point, and he says that if the father left property, then they're responsible, which would mean that he's referring to the first case that he said, that even though they're exempt from minus, but that's only because they don't have the father's property. But if they would have actual realty, real estate, so then they would have to pay for that as well. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that Rava gave two cases there. He says the first case was it died inus, and they're exempt. Second case was if they thought it was their father's, then they have to pay the May Basar Bazal, the cheaper price. But if the father left property, then they have to pay. And that would mean that they have to pay the full price. We're not sure because he has two cases, and then we have an ending, we have a conclusion. We don't know is it going on case number two or case number one. So, some say that that if the father left realty, then they have to pay. That's talking about when it died with unpreventable circumstances by inus. We said that they're exempt, but if there's realty, then they have to pay. Some said no, that if there's realty, they have to pay. That was referring to that if they slaughtered it, they only have to pay the cheaper price for the meat. They don't have to pay the full price. The one that says that they're exempt from unpreventable circumstances, but if the father left them realty, then they have to pay for it. Then for sure, if they sechted it, they have to pay. And this argues on Rav Papa. We'll see in a minute what this is referring to. It's an interesting thing. But the one that says that it's referring to if they shechted it, they have to pay 1/3 off, right? The cheaper price of meat. But if there was realty, then they have to pay the full price. But if it died naturally, if it died and it was unpreventable circumstances, then we would say that they're not responsible. Behind the Rav Papa, and this would fit with Rav Papa. Now we don't know what Rav Papa said yet. The Gemara is like discussing something that we didn't introduce yet. But now it says Rav Papa, because Rav Papa said, let's say he has a stolen cow. He took a cow, he stole a cow, and he shechs it on Shabbos. I'm sorry? Stolen. He stole it. He stole it. This is Rav Papa. Look at Rav Papa. What do you have over there? It says over there that it was borrowed. Find it there, Rav Papa. If one had in possession a cow that was stolen. A cow that was stolen. Rav Papa. No, if one had in his possession a cow that was stolen by him before the Shabbos. Okay. So,
excuse me.
That's going back to the previous case. That's referring to. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Excuse me. I lost the logic of what this argument, the connection between the cow and land. I'm losing this. What is the argument?
What we're saying is that the estate, that if there's realty, then the estate owes the robber.
Right.
It's not the item. It's not a debt. It's that would go on to the inheritors. It's just coming from the estate. In other words, whenever there's realty, it's as if it's already been collected. Sort of, it's already in his hands. It existed the whole time, and then the original owner, not the robber, the original owner has the rights to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're saying. But now what we're introducing now is a very interesting concept of remember there was like a minchas chinuch that discussed the laws of Shabbos during the week. Now, is there a halacha during the week that on Shabbos I'm not allowed to do the lamites malachas, or does that take effect on Shabbos? Now, let's put it different. Let's say, do I have to go to the Beis Hamikdash? Do I have to be Oila Regel the whole year when it becomes Yom Tov? I have to go to the Beis Hamikdash, or does that not exist? Does that mitzvah not exist the whole year? In other words, am I allowed to put myself in a situation the whole year that will affect my ability to go to the Beis Hamikdash during the time before the Yom Tov when I'm supposed to be going? Am I allowed to put myself into a situation where the laws of Shabbos are going to be affected during the week, and the laws of Shabbos aren't applicable, right? So do I say that the whole time those laws are around? It's only, do I have an obligation during the week to keep Shabbos on Shabbos? Now, I know that I do, but do I have, but what we're about to see is when someone borrows a cow, is he chayiv in einsin in the pay for the unpreventable circumstances, even in unpreventable circumstances, before the einus actually happened? Or does that law only kick in when the einus happens? Okay, so this is going to be introduced in an interesting way. It goes like this. Let's say someone stole a cow, and he stole it before Shabbos. He stole it on Friday. And on Shabbos, he shechs it. He shechs it on Shabbos. So he's chayiv. Now, he's chayiv to pay for, does he have to pay the 4 or 5 times? Probably, right? It says 4 or 5 times, right? Okay. Because the reason is because the obligation to pay the 4 or 5 times already kicks in before he even checks it. Because when he stole it, all the laws that apply to a thief, including the law of paying the 4 or 5 times, is already there from when he stole it. So since he stole it before Shabbos, and so the obligation to pay the 4 or 5 times he's already chayiv if he's going to do that. So therefore, even though on Shabbos he gets capital punishment, and you could say that the capital punishment comes together with the slaughtering, we say no, because the obligation to pay the 4 or 5 times came before the violation of Shabbos, because that law was already in place by the time that he stole it. Yeah. Right. Right. So this is the statement of Rav Papa. We'll have to take this back in a second to the borrower. Well, let's say he borrowed the cow and he shechted it on Shabbos, then he's potter, then he's exempt. Because when he was a borrower, he wasn't a thief, he was just a borrower. The only time he becomes a thief, and it's not even a thief, he becomes a robber, not a thief, he becomes a robber when he slaughters it. That all takes place on Shabbos. Okay, so now let's take it back to the 2 possibilities over here. We had a question if the cow was borrowed, the borrower dies, he leaves it to his sons, and the sons, and it dies, and it dies. He leaves it to the sons, and it dies by unpreventable circumstances. So if we say that the obligation of einus takes place already when the father accepts the cow, when the father borrows the cow, then the obligation of einus to pay for einus was already there when they inherited it. But if the obligation to pay for einus only kicks in when the einus happens, so they never accepted on themselves. The father didn't accept the einus because the einus never happened. The law never kicked in. The children never borrowed it, so they for sure didn't accept the responsibility to pay for einus. So it could be that if you accept Rav Papa says that obligations come before it actually occurs. Right? They said that the obligation of the thief to pay for the 4 or 5 already kicks in once it was stolen first. So then, if that's the case, then really the law that if the father had realty, then the children need to pay for it. That would fit with Rav Papa. Because the Masnila Seifa argues with Rav Papa. Manda Masnila Aresha fits with Rav Papa. No, 1 second. Manda Masnila Seifa, Aval Aresha Lai is exempt. That would fit with Rav Papa. That it only comes in Shas Einstein. Okay, show me your commentary here. Yeah, because of 1 second. 33. Unlike a thief who incurs liability for the stolen object when the borrower does not incur liability to pay for the borrowed object when he borrows it, only when the borrowed item suffers damage or loss, or in the sense does become liable. Hence, in this case, when the borrower slaughtered the cow, he incurred liability at the time of slaughter. He thus became liable to payment at the same time as he became liable to capital punishment. Hence, the rule Kamma Daf. It's not type Kefal. Not type Kefal because he's not a thief. He's a robber.
He's liable for capital punishment for stealing a cow?
He's liable for capital punishment for shechting it on Shabbos. So he doesn't have to pay for it because Kamle b'derav minei. So just 1 second. Yeah, you're allowed to shech for someone sick. Where's the sick person? You're allowed to violate Shabbos for someone that's sick, but we didn't mention anyone sick. Yeah. So,
that would be like in Cuba. In Cuba, they give you death for killing a cow.
Rav Papa, whose statement is quoted below, maintains that a borrower does not incur liability for unavoidable mishaps until the mishap occurs. In his view, therefore, the owner could not collect from the father's real property, at least where the animal died on its own. Since the father was not alive when the mishap took place, he cannot incur liability at that time. It seems like we're saying the opposite. It seems like we're saying that according to Rav Papa, the responsibility of the borrower does not take place at the time of borrowing. It only takes place later. Yeah, that's the shot. Okay. When the borrower, if the responsibility of Inus would have taken place at the time that he borrows it, then he would have to pay, when he shechted on Shabbos, he would have to pay for it going back to the time that he borrowed, because the obligation to pay was before Shabbos. Right. Right. Going back to the borrower, though, when does the obligation of unpreventable circumstance take place? That takes place, according to Rav Papa, only later on, not originally. And therefore, Rabba's din that the children need to pay, the Rabba's din that the children, if the father left realty, they need to pay. If it's according to Rav Papa, then that would not, then the children would not need to pay, even though there's realty. And if it's arguing with Rav Papa, then the children wouldn't. Taner Rabbanan, started in the Brisa. Brisa quotes a pasuk. It says that he should return the stolen object that he stole. Why does it have to say that he stole? He should return the stolen object. Right? Stolen object that he stole is stolen object. Doesn't have to say that he stole. Rather, what it means is Yachse Ken Shegazal. he has to return the way it was when it was stolen. And Mikan Amru, here they said, it's not referring to the father, it's referring to Agaisal Michael Esbanav Ptur Milashalim. Someone feeds it to his children, then they're exempt because it was already consumed. But in but if the father left it intact, then whether they're adult children or minors, they have to pay it back if it's intact. Mishum Sumchas Amru, but Sumchas argued on this. He said, he said that adults have to pay it back, but children don't have to pay it back. That's what we mentioned before, two different prices. Question is, children need to pay back what their father left. Well, we our question was, Machlaikas Rami Bar Chama and Rava, if the inheritor is a purchaser, or if he just takes that position. Yeah, is it considered changing hands when it goes into and there's differences if it changes hands or if it remains in the same hand. Okay, we get a little story over here. The Gemara is about to start some interesting discussions with Naftali. You'll enjoy this. It's Beis Din protocol. You'll see. First, it introduces it like this. It says Bar Chamua de Rab Yirmiyah, the son of the father-in-law of Rabbi Yirmiyah, which means his brother-in-law. Tarak Golei Ba Pei de Rab Yirmiyah. He closed the door on Rabbi Yirmiyah. He took over the father's house that had passed away, and he locked Rabbi Yirmiyah out. Golei Ba Pei de Rabbi Yirmiyah in front of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Also Rabbi Yirmiyah, also Lakami de Rav Avin. So Rabbi Yirmiyah goes to Rav Avin. Amar, he says, Shaloyu Teveah. He says, what's he doing? I'm the owner of that house. And Rav Avin says, no, he's claiming his own item. He's claiming his own. It belongs to him. I can bring proof. I've been living in that house for 3 years already. While the father was alive, the father knew that I was living there. And that's enough of a proof, even though I don't have a document, that's enough of a proof that it's mine. Because the father would have protested. Amarle, it's an interesting thing, because if the point of the chazaka is that he would have protested, maybe if it's his daughter living there, maybe he wouldn't protest. Doesn't mean that it's his. No, there's a question over here that I'm sure the Rishonim are going to have to deal with. Right? Usually, how does a chazaka work? If you had a problem with it, you would have said something. That's how chazaka works. The fact that you didn't say anything all these years means that you had no problem with it, but not necessarily would that apply to a son-in-law. Anyway, that's in Bava Basra, yeah. Chapter 3. Okay, so it says, Amalei. So Rav Avin says back, what do you want to do? You want to bring witnesses when the owner isn't here, when the litigant isn't here? We're referring to the child. You see, Rabbi Yirmiyah's brother-in-law was a minor. So Rav Avin saying, we can't bring witnesses to testify. You don't have the owner here. The owner, the litigant is a minor. He doesn't count. The Gemara says, "V'loi, b'aktani ben gedolim ben ketanim chayavin." Of course you can. We even have times where the litigant is a minor and he has to pay. Talking about if the father stole. If the father stole and he left the item. We're not talking about if he left an item that's visible, that's recognizable that it was his. Recognizable that it's his. He left his Rolls Royce, and everyone knew it had his name on the side, and everyone says, "Oh, that's the stolen one." That's not that we're not talking about. That everyone holds because of covered aviyim, you have to give back. We're talking about items that are intact, but it's not known that it's the father's. So we had a machlekes between Sumchas and the Rabbanan. If the Rabbanan say that he needs to give it back, Sumchas says that he doesn't, that the child doesn't need to return it. Now, so over here we say Vaktani ben gedolim ben ketanim chayavin. The Rabbanan hold that it has to be returned, even though it's only a child, because it's intact. Amalei very machlekes Sumchas b'tzidcha. 1 second, but Sumchas argues on that. Amar, so Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Ichbel kulei hai, that means that you're going to bend over backwards. Ichbul Kuli Alma. You're gonna force the entire world. You're gonna, just to get me into trouble, just to make problems for me. You're gonna say that everyone holds like Sumchas. I'm going like the sages who say that the child returns it. If the child returns it, then we can do a court case in front of the child. Adahachi, Rabbi Yirmiyah wants the house, and the brother-in-law wants the house. But the brother-in-law is a minor. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, I have proof. Well, right now, he went to Rav Avin. But Adahachi, meanwhile, Igalgal Mosa, the story became known. And also Matal Kamidir Bavo, it comes to Rav Bavo. Amar, he says, you guys that you're talking about this, you never heard the comment of Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama in the name of Rabbi Yosef? Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama said in the name of Rabbi Yosef, let's say there's a child, he takes his servants. Now, what exactly his servants are doing? Maybe to support him, or maybe to be witnesses for something. And he goes into his friend's field. He says, this is mine. So, we don't say, oh, we can't do a court case because he's a minor. So we'll have to wait till he grows up, and then we'll do a court case. Meanwhile, the guy lost his house. We don't say that. Rather, what we say is, you immediately remove him from the property. And then afterwards, when he gets older, then we'll do the court case. Just because he ran into someone's property and decided to stay there, he says it's mine. That we don't say that, oh, but you're a minor, now we can't do anything. No, we remove him from the property and we'll reassess that case when he's an adult. So Rabbi Avo has an interesting claim for Rabbi Yirmiyah, saying that the minor came into the property. That's Rabbi Yirmiyah's brother-in-law. And you're telling me he's a minor, we can't do anything, you have to leave him there. He says, no. We have the statements from Rabbi Shia that you remove him from the property, and when he becomes an adult, then we'll discuss it. The father-in-law passed away. The father-in-law passed away, and that Rabbi Yirmiyah is claiming ownership of the house, that he had it, and now the minor is saying that I'm the inheritor. The daughter went to inherit. Gemara says, "Mi dami." Can you compare the case of Rabbi Shia, Rabbi Yisbacham, named Rabbi Shia, to the case of Rabbi Yirmiyah Hasam, who the mafkinim over there? You take him out like Kaimale Achazaka Davua, Kaimale Chazaka, because we don't have the child over there didn't have the father that wasn't claiming that it was his father's, but so therefore we'll remove him. But over here, he's claiming that it's his father's. Over here, you're really extracting it from him. He's more of the owner than you are. So we should leave it by the child in the case of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Yeah, the comparison wasn't a perfect comparison. Because over there, the child just ran into his friend's property. We say you take him out. Over here, he's running into his father's property. That's a different story.
Okay, so both people are claiming that they're the inheritors.
Yeah, well, Rabbi Yirmiyah is not claiming the inheritance. He's claiming that it was either bought it or gifted to him. And the child is claiming that he's the inheritor. This is a classic case. This would be common. But, one family member says that the father gave it to him, and everyone's saying, well, I don't know what you're talking about. This was, we've been dreaming about this the whole time. No? See, that I could imagine this happening, right? Okay. Yeah, Yitzi's on. True? Common? Okay. Amar Rav Ashi. Yeah, it looks like Yitzi's at the Rebbe's house now. Amar Rav Ashi, Amar Rav Shabsai. Isn't that interesting? Shabsi. The name Shabsi is written over here with an aleph. There's a whole discussion how to spell Shabsi. But Shabtai. Now, there's a little bit of a problem. We'll see if this is really Rav Ashi. There's a problematic comment here. As we'll see, it doesn't fit. If it's Rav Ashi, there's a problem. So the Yaivitz, which is Yaakov Emden, adjusted to Rav Asi. was much earlier than Rav Ashi. Anyway, the comment over here in the name of Rav Shabsi is that we can accept testimony if the litigant isn't there. We can accept the witnesses to come, and we heard well, at least one side of the story, and the witnesses will come. And hopefully, the other guy will show up. We'll finish the case when he's here. But it looks like we can get the case started. We can accept witnesses even without this person, in the court. It's a little surprising. Sometimes the court does their own homework, but this is a testimony. You would assume that you should have everyone there so that he can say, he can defend himself. Say that wasn't the story. That it was a little different. That was something else. He should be there. But anyway, he says that it's acceptable. Toiba Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan is astonished. Can you really do that? Now, the problem is that Rabbi Yochanan was way before Rav Ashi. So if Rav Ashi is saying this, you can't have Rabbi Yochanan stepping in, who already passed away, stepping in and commenting on that. So we could say that one of the ways of resolving this is if you say that Rav Ashi said in the name of Rav Shabsai this halacha, and he also said that Rabbi Yochanan commented. That's Rav Ashi quoting Rabbi Yochanan. It's not Rabbi Yochanan that's stepping in. Yeah. Okay. Kibla Minei, to resolve this, Kibla Minei Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina understood from that he received. We're talking about when the litigant is ill, or the witnesses are ill, or the witnesses are on their way on a trip, ready to catch a plane. And they sent for him to come, and he didn't come. And meanwhile, the witnesses are either ill or they're traveling or this, and we need to finish this case because we're about to lose the witnesses here. So he said that we can accept the witnesses even though he's not involved in isn't there. Yeah. It's very common in Din Teiros that the issue a summons and the person doesn't show up, and so they put him in chayrim. The guy doesn't come. Right? Someone wants to bring someone to a Din Teira, so they send the bezdin sends a summons, and the guy doesn't show up. So usually, what the guy says is, "Okay, didn't show up. So let's just do the case without him. He didn't show up. He forfeits his defense. Let's paskin, and then I'll have the verdict." And that's a complicated process because it really only works if the guy agrees to these dayanim. He can get out of going to a din Torah by saying I'm going to a different bezdin, going to a higher bezdin or something. We'll see in this Gemara. But anyway, Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Rav Yudah says in the name of Shmuel, Makabla Meidim Shlei B'fnei Baldin, exactly what we heard before, that you can receive testimony, you can receive witnesses, even though the litigant isn't there. Amar Marukva says, Shmuel, for I understood, or I heard from Shmuel, maybe you heard it directly. Marukva was the head of the Bezdin in the days of Shmuel. Shmuel was really I think the bigger Talmud Chacham, but that's what I picked up somewhere. I'm not sure if I can back that up. But Marukva was still the head of the court. Yeah. He said, I heard from Shmuel, going the Paschule Bedine, talking about that the case was already started. They already opened the case. And and then they sent for him to come and he doesn't come. That's when we say, okay, you're not showing up. So this is talking about where the Bezdin had power, probably without the person agreeing to it. Nowadays, when we do Din Torah, they have to sign an arbitration agreement. And without the arbitration agreement, you can't say that you can't say that you owe me money and I agreed to this court, so therefore you owe me money. Yeah. And one time I got a bill from a phone company that wasn't my provider. MCI. Remember MCI? It was a landline. They sent me a bill. I said, "Why am I getting a bill? You don't. I don't have a phone service with you." They said, "No, you accepted a collect call, and therefore you get the bill." I said, "I never accepted a collect call." They said, "No, your answering machine went on and said you have reached, so that's considered like accepting collect call." So anyway, I told them that could be your policy, but I never signed an agreement with you. So you can't bill me for something. If I never accepted, you claim that that's accepted, but who, I would need to agree to that. Anyway, I think I had to pay it. Okay, back to the Gemara. We're talking about where the guy, with the court case already started, and then they sent for him. He doesn't show up. But if the court case never started, then then the guy for not showing up can say, I'm going to the Supreme Court. I'm not taking this to the court around the corner. I'm going to the higher court. Mar says, if that's a real claim that a person can say, I'm going to the higher court, then if that's the case, then even if the case started, he can say, I want to take this to a higher court. Sounds like he wants to appeal it. Is that the way they translate it there? In the middle of the case, he can claim, that's it, I'm going to another court. Is there any comment over there? Yeah, now Taisus mentioned that this would only be the defendant, not the one with the claim, because every time he sees he's losing,
Yeah, once it started, he's stuck.
Yeah. So
he's free. Choice of venue is always the defendant, but once he's started the case, he's stuck.
So over here it says, if the defendant has the right to demand that the case be tried by the highest court, he should be able to exercise the right under any circumstances. Okay. Now the Gemara answers this. That what's happening here is Amar Ravina going to knock out diska mi best in agadol. Diska means like a license or authorization. The plaintiff has a letter from the best in agadol that's authorizing the lower court to do this judgment, like as if they're sending they're going to take care of this. So then he can't claim that I'm going to the higher court. It's already been authorized that the higher court said that that this is the court that's going to deal with it. Okay, so if that's the case, when he doesn't show up, so then they can accept edus, they can accept testimony even without him there. Yes, sort of. Hill is asking if the Bezdin allows them to go to heter akais, that they could go to a regular court. The Bezdin allows them to go to a civil court. So then, if it doesn't work out the way that they wanted, they can't come back to Bezdin. Yes. But there's two parts. No. That's because that you decided that this is what you're going to do. So this is what you're going to do. You can't change your mind just afterwards, right? I didn't think that I was going to lose. I never would have agreed to this had I known that I was going to lose.
Usually people don't think that they're going to. That's why they put up a fight.
Right.
What was all that money paid for to the?
Of course, the council. Council gets all the money.
No. I'm talking about the other money. Who paid that?
What do you mean?
I'm saying to the judges.
Oh. Amarav. You know the story with the guy that he passed to the judge under the table. He passed him an envelope full of money. He passed it in. Anyway, the judge ruled in his favor. Afterwards, the judge gets home and he opens up the envelope. It wasn't money. It was all just paper. It wasn't really money. People today are so dishonest. Okay. So we're holding now Amarav. This is interesting. If there's a document that has signatures on it, and you want to validate this document, it's a notarized document that it's the signatures are valid. So then Rav says that if I don't need the litigant there, I can do it without the litigant. I can validate this document. We're just looking at signatures. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I need to have the litigant there. He may claim that you're validating this document. It's not just telling me about signatures, it's telling me about what's in it as well. And the person may have a claim that it's a forgery or something. Let me explain to you what Rabbi Yochanan's logic is. The pasuk says, when an ox was goring 3 times, and they have to take it to court, and they have to warn the owner of the ox that he should be guarding his ox. Everything has to be done in front of the owner. That the owner of the ox has to come and stand there. So too, when you're validating a document, notarizing the document, you should be there and be able to say, maybe there's something going on here that we should know about just before they sign. That the Moisav plus Havina, there's a signature that we do. In front of 3 people, we were and came in front of us these witnesses and testified that this is their signature. Amar Rava. Rava says, Hilchasa mekaymenes ashtarsh lebifnei baldin afilu aymed v'tzivech. Rava says the halacha is that you're allowed to validate, to notarize a document, even though the litigant isn't standing there, and even if he is standing there and claiming that no, it's a forgery, we're still allowed to validate it. That doesn't have to do with it. It has to do with we're checking out the signatures, and the signatures are correct. The witnesses claim that they signed that document. We're gonna validate that document. The Yomar, if it says Nakitali Zimna the Maisina Sade Maranale Lushtara, wait, I have witnesses. Hold on, I'm gonna go bring them. Just don't do anything yet. So that if he claims that, then we give him time to go get that. Iyasa, if he comes in the time with his witnesses that are going to claim that this was not a real document, maybe he wants to claim that it was just being used for practice. He was a scribe and he was writing something. I don't know what he wants, whatever, any claim that he wants to say that, or that he paid it back, maybe that he paid it back and somehow he left it in his hand for some reason. If the document's in the wrong hand, then that's problematic. In the olden days, that was the proof that it wasn't paid back, the fact that he's holding it. Ila Yasa, but if he doesn't show up, then we wait for him Monday, Thursday, Monday. That was the days when the court was in session. Ila Yasa, if he doesn't show up, Kasminan Psicha Lave, Tishim Yaimin. Talking about that, he's not paying it. So what they'll do is they'll put him in a initial cherem, which is called shamta. It's the first stage of excommunication. And they'll put him into this shamta, this cherem, for 90 days. The first 30 days, they don't go into his property and start confiscating property to pay the law back. Because they say, he's trying to borrow money, and it takes 30 days to get the loan. So he's trying to borrow money, and he's going to pay back, but you have to give him some time. He's working on getting the loan. How long does it take to make the closing on a house? To get the mortgage? About 30 days. Well, so 30 days is getting his loan. Why does it take so long? Just press a button, computer.
It's mostly like I've gotten it done like one single day because things have happened, and then I've been on the phone with the bank and got it done in one single day. But what takes the most time is the people because they have to send an appraisal. And while you contact an appraiser and he goes out, that's a piece of week, and it takes 4 or 5 days to make the report. And that's
so it's a bunch of other details. Mitziyai, the second 30 days, because there's 90 days here, right? So there's 3 sets of 30. They also don't go to the property. Maybe he wasn't able to get the loan, so instead he's selling property, and that could take 30 days to sell the property. Now, on the last 30 days, they also don't go into the property. He sold the property in the middle 30 days, but the guy that bought the property is trying to get his money together to pay for it. So in order for him to pay back what he owes, he has to wait for the purchaser to come up with the money to give it to him. So all 90 days, they don't go into the property. But after 90 days, it's interesting how the Gemara spelled this out. The first 30 days, they don't go in. The second 30 days, they don't go in. The third 30 days, they don't go in. They could have all said that in one sentence, that they don't go in. But the logic for each one was different. But the fact that they don't confiscate the property, that was the same. It's interesting that it didn't shorten this.
That's mostly like credit cards. After 30 days, they give you like a notice that they put like on your credit. Oh, he's past 30 days, then 60 days, and then 90 days, and then they kind of like bought up there. Policy that's a protection I can see
Right. So, lo yasa, if he doesn't come, after the 90 days, they write an authorization that you can go into the property and confiscate valuables. What type of valuables is going to be? The valuables is only going to be actual property. You can't confiscate personality. You can only confiscate realty. We'll see in a moment why. But this is only when the person says, Asina, I'm coming. But if he says, I don't care what you say, I'm not listening, then and then they write the authorization immediately because there's nothing to wait for. He's not even saying that I'm going to pay. When do we say that we do this? We give him 90 days. That's if there's a loan and he has to come up with money. But if it was an actual item that was given to him to watch, and he doesn't want to give it back, he says, I lent you my bike. He says, no, I'm keeping it. He says, no, give it back. He says, no. Then la'alta kasvina. Or even if he says, give me time. Even if he says, give me time, we'll say, no, you don't get time. Because the item is there. There's nothing that he needs to work on. He doesn't have to sell property. We'll see a little bit about if he's not in town. That's going to come up. That's how we get him the message. And when do we write it? A document, that's only for property. But we never write an authorization to confiscate personality. The reason for that is there's another concern here, that the borrower may show up with his witnesses that he was talking about and say that this whole thing was not correct. So if we allowed the creditor to confiscate personality, he may have consumed that personality. And when the guy brings his proof, he says, okay, now give me back what you took. He says, I'm sorry, it's gone. Now he has to wait for him to come up with the money to pay for what he owes him. So we don't want that to happen. So what we do is we'll only confiscate realty, which assumed doesn't change the value usually. And so that way he would say that this whole thing wasn't correct. He can just take it right back. You can't say I lost it. However, if the malva has karka, if the malva has if the malva is the creditor, if the creditor has property, so then we can actually take away from the debtor, we can take personality. And what are you worried about? That when he's going to come to him and say that this whole case was incorrect, and you really owe me you really owe me the money, everything that you took away. Don't worry about it. Even if he ate that, but he has property that he can give it back. And then we can write it authorization on personality. The Gemara says v'lohi, but that's not actually the halacha. Adrachta metaltli like a spin. We never write authorization on personality. Alphagav disle makarki. Even if the creditor has realty, you have a concern that maybe the realty that he has could depreciate, and we don't want to confiscate property and not be able to really give back. What would happen if we confiscated the property and it depreciates? Doesn't matter. I guess we would give it back. The property is the property. That's what I took away. I didn't make it depreciated. That's what it was, right? But if we confiscate realty, the price of, let's say, $100,000, we say he has a property that's worth $100,000, so don't worry about it. That we can't say, because could be the price of the property is going to go down to 90, and then he won't be able to pay back, but we confiscate.
During the last bubble, when the houses depreciated a lot, the banks were working with the people that will adjust your loan to the current value of the house, so people would keep paying. So everyone would go to foreclosure.
That has to do with this. Yeah, it's the logic is there. We're just saying that we don't want to confiscate personality and then not be able to give back because the house, the property depreciates. Now it says when we write this authorization that we're going to confiscate property because he owes money, we have to notify him. We have to notify the person that his property is going to be confiscated. Bani mili demikra, that's only if he's close, if he's nearby. But if he's far away, when he's traveling, he's not in town, then we don't have to notify him. But if he's far away, but he has relatives, so let's say there's a caravan that's traveling to the place where the person is. Then we would wait 12 months until until he goes. Who's going? The relative is going to go? Until someone's going to travel there and come back. Kyoda Ravina, just like Ravina, Shola Maracha. He waited for Maracha. Tracy Archishata, and he didn't collect until 12 months later. He was waiting for Maracha to come back from Bechuzoi for the caravan to go and come back. B'loihi. Gemara says it's not so. Asamin Shalima. That case of Ravina was a different story because Maracha was a very strong person. If they would have given him the Maracha that's strong, or Ravina was strong? Maracha was strong. If they would have given him the authorization, then they never would have been able to take it away from him when the person comes. But normally we don't wait. We would only wait at the azal shlicha betlasa b'shabbata, which means that we don't wait the year. We would only wait one day. The shliach would go on Tuesday. The asabar bani would come back on Wednesday b'shabbata. And then we would do the case on Thursday. Now, I thought that this was the confiscation that they were sending. What are you showing me here? The defendant has relatives near the court through whom he can be notified. The court will not send its own messengers on a long trip for this purpose, but if there are people who are traveling to the defendant's location, in any event, the court will use them, although the collection of payment will be delayed until they reach them. Okay, so it looks like from the Gemara that we're dealing with the authorization to confiscate the property. And we want the person to come because maybe he can make a claim that will stop the whole process. Yeah, so there's both things here. It's the actual conclusion, the verdict of the case. We don't want to carry it out until we have the person here that could defend himself. That's why we would like him to come. Okay. Amar Ravina. Ravina says, if the Bezdin sends a messenger to go summon someone and the guy says, I'm not coming or whatever, and then he comes back, the messenger, the court, what's it called? Court messenger. Court messenger comes back and he says, he reports what the person said. We trust him as if it's two witnesses. But that's only for Shamta to do the initial chayrim. But to write the document of the initial chayrim, even the Mamayna Kamersa, because this is going to cost money, Mamayna Kamersa, because he's going to need to pay the court. Oh my gosh, the guy that gets put in chayrim has to pay for his own docket, for the own court document that puts him in chayrim. Like for that, they won't do. They won't trust the court messenger because now you're trusting this is a financial obligation that's being placed on the person, and they only have one witness.
He's only let back in after he pays his first.
Amar Ravina. Ravina says, Yavina and Zimna apuma de itzav apuma de shivavi. We can give a summons. Ravina says we can do a summons through a woman or through neighbors. But we would only do that if the person isn't in town. Avalisa b'masa.
That's funny. It says that or she's still one woman that
Yeah.
that would definitely be you know, like the story with the sleeping guy sleeping in the cemetery. You know, and then his wife.
Oh, his wife, yeah.
From
Brachas
another lady,
stuck
you
his
know,
test. Yeah.
Great fun.
That's what it says there. Through the defendant's wife. Yonatan is telling me that when it says over here through a woman, it's talking about the wife of the defendant. That's Gemara, Dr. Stein, that you're quoting, where it says he went to sleep in the cemetery. Commentaries say, how is he allowed to sleep in the cemetery? You're not supposed to sleep in the cemetery. So they explain that what it's referring to is he had given money to a poor man, and his wife was upset with him. The wife sent him out, and he went to sleep in the cemetery. So the commentaries say he slept in the cemetery meant that he slept worrying about money. That's called the cemetery. He never thought about money in his life. First time he thought about it, they said, "Oh, he went to sleep in the cemetery." It was like an expression that he was worried about money.
How does that go with the conversation?
That was all a dream. Yeah.
So that repeats the whole thing we learned here, that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, was that what it was talking about? Communicating? I don't think so.
No, he went back and
the next year
he had the same 3 years.
Yeah, I guess the next year he thought about money again and he went to sleep. Okay. Avalisa b'masa, but if the person is in town, then they won't. Then we won't use a woman or the neighbors as a messenger. The Amrinan, because we have a concern. Maybe they won't say. The Amri, Ashkachtinu shlichu de Bezdin v'Amrlei. Yeah, don't worry about it. The Bezdin has other people that will tell him. It's not so important for me to tell him because there's other. Okay, if I don't do it, someone else. They'll rely on too many cooks. If it's in town, someone else will do it. Also, this was only said that they will use woman or a neighbor, if the person himself, when he travels, he does not walk by the door of the bezdin. But if every day he walks by the door of the bezdin, then they won't use a woman or a neighbor, because the woman or neighbor will say, he goes by anyway, I'm sure they'll find him. They'll catch him and he's walking by. Amri Ashkechu Beidin of Armalei. Bezdin will find him and they'll tell him. When would they use a woman or a neighbor? Only if he comes that day. But if he doesn't see him that day, then they won't use a woman or a neighbor. Maybe they'll forget. So yeah, they figured it out and whatever. Okay. Amarava. Rava says, "Haiman the Kasavala Psicha al the Layasi Ladina." Someone that they wrote about him the entry cherem. This is the first type of cherem, the shamta. If they wrote that document that he didn't show up in court, adasi ladina lemekrinle, then we don't tear up that document until he actually shows up in court. Al leitzayas ladina, if they wrote the document because he didn't listen to the court, then adatzayas lemekrinle, we don't write the document until he listens to the court. But it's not so. Given them tzaisna karinale. Once he says, I'm ready to listen, then they tear it up. Yeah, that's someone was the Bezdin wrote a cherem on someone. The Shamta, he didn't show up in court. And 3 times they summoned him. And then several years later, it was like an Erev Rosh Hashanah or something, and he said, okay, I'm willing to listen now. So he wanted the Bezdin to write the document right away before Rosh Hashanah, They said, okay, yeah, it's true. We're supposed to write it, but just give me some time to. Officially, they're supposed to write it right away. Okay. Amar Rav Chisda, Koven's man. When they set a time for the summons, when would that be? Sheni v'chamishi v'sheni zimna v'zimna ubas v'zimna. They give him a time, another time, and then time after that. And then after the three days go by, the 3 Monday, Thursday, Monday, so then they'll write the document that he is not cooperating.
What if any of those things?
Yeah, then it won't. Then you'd have to do it differently. Yeah. Ravasi Ikla Bei Rav Kana. Ravasi happened to be, it could be Ravashi. Ravashi, the later Rav Kana was a teacher of Ravashi. Ravashi happened to be by the house of Rav Kana, Shiva maybe. It was a woman who was summoned to court in the evening, and in the morning they already wrote on her that she didn't show up. They already wrote this type of cherem. Amalei, so Ravashi says to Rav Kana, you don't hold what Rav Chisda says, that we that you have to get 3 days, Bahab, Monday, Thursday, Monday. You're just doing it immediately on a Tuesday. Amalei, he said, that's only for men. The honest b'masa, men, they're busy, they're traveling, they're not in the town, they have business. But a woman, she's just at home. What is she? She doesn't come meredisi, she's rebellious or immediately. Is this not politically correct? Okay. So Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, don't do summons in Nisan or in Tishrei because of the holidays. They can't do a summons on Erev Yom Tov. You can't do it on a Friday. They can't send the summons. But they could send the summons during Nisan that you're going to come, the case is going to be after Nisan. Could send the summons in Tishrei that the case is going to be after Tishrei. So Mimali Shabbat Labas Mali Shabbat Lekabin, but they don't send it on a Friday that it's going to be after the Friday, which would mean on the next Monday or something. My timer, but the Shabbat Tarit is busy preparing for Shabbos. You're going to forget about it, and you won't even be able to concentrate it at the summons is there. You won't put it into your into your calendar. Oh, interesting. That's an interesting shot. Amar Rav Nachman, Le'yavin and Zimna, Le'lev Kala Bekalav, Le'lev Rigla Berigla. The people come to the drasha, they don't do a summons then. And they don't do the summons when people come to the holiday, or come to hear the drasha about the holiday, which was done 30 days before the holiday. They would speak about the holiday. You don't do summonses then. When they would come to Rav Nachman, he would say, did I gather you here for your own purposes, for your own court cases? Is that why you're here? You want me to do summons now about the thing? That's why you came. You're not to hear the drasha. You came for your own reasons. However, now that there are people that are trickers, you see, the concern about this was that people would stop coming to the drasha because they could get summoned at the drasha. So we're not doing summons at the drasha. They don't do that. Now there's a concern that people, they come to the summon, they come to the drasha, and they feel protected, and they avoid other things. They said no. Now we have to do it when the person's here. We have to do it. Can't let them get away. We learned in the Mishnah that if there was someone that if the father left things that have achrayas, that have responsibility, which we understood meant property. However, we had another interpretation which we quoted, but we quoted from the Gemara here. So then the children need to pay back. Dr. Stein, there's so many messages going on from Yitzi over here. Match the color of your tie to your phone case.
He has nothing to do. Tell me who a day job.
Yeah, Dr. Stein says you should get a day job. Okay. Oh yeah, it's a picture of you. That's what he did.
Old pictures. Oh,
okay, so if he left, if the father left realty for the children, then they have to pay back what was taken. So Masnila Rebbe Shimon Bray, Rebbe taught to Reb Shimon his son, it doesn't have to be literally that he left realty. Even if he left a cow that's plowing, and or a donkey that has a load on it, you have to return it anyway because of kavod avim, because of the honor of the father. Because everyone knows that this is the item that the father stole. Rav Kana asked Rav, this is the earlier Rav Kana. He asked Rav, Mita umesavala. Let's say it's a bed. And he sitting on it. Shulchan vaychel alav. It's a table that he ate at. Mahu. What about that? Should we say that that's the same thing? In other words, it's not something that's used outside. It's something that's used inside. But nevertheless, if someone does go into the house, they will see, oh, that's the table that's a distinct table that belonged to that person, and you have it. How do you have it? Your father stole it. Oh, this doesn't look good. So would that apply even to things that are inside the house? So Amar La, he said to him, Rav said to Rav Kana, give to the wise and he'll get even smarter, which means that from the answer that you know already that it applies to a cow, so you should know that it also applies to the table as well, if someone would be able to recognize it. Okay, let's go further. Ein partin. What's wrong? Oh. He's showing how he gave you a plaque at one of the scenes.
My wayward son.
Okay. In part let me kiss shel gabayim. We don't ask change from the tax collector's pocket box or from the how do they translate kiss shel gabayim? The purse of the gabay of what? Another tax collector. Both tax collector? Or charity collector. You also don't take tzedakah from them. But if the tax collector is going to give from his house, from the marketplace, he has money somewhere in the marketplace which is not from his tax box, then that's acceptable. Tana, start in a brisa. But if you need to get change, you're allowed to take change from him. Okay, we don't want to make use of this money, which we consider stolen, and so we don't want to ask him for change. We don't want to acknowledge anything, take tzedakah from it, all of that. But if you have to pay, if he's charging you a tax, you want to get change, that you're allowed to salvage. You give him $1, you want the 50 cents back. That you're allowed to do. Gemara says, Muhsin, tax collectors, we think that the robbers, 1 second, Ramar Shmuel, Dina de Malchus Dina. They're not robbers. They're collecting tax for the government. That's the law. The law of the land is the land. This is Shmuel's famous statement. It says it in Gittin. Amar Rav Chanina bar Kana, Amar Shmuel, we're talking about a tax where it's up to the person how much he wants. He could take as much as he wants. Tax collector, it's not a tax that has a law how much each person, tax brackets and amounts. This guy can collect as much as he wants, and he gives to the king whatever, a certain amount. And meanwhile, he steals from everyone else. He keeps the rest.
Shake you down as much as you can get.
Right. So that's considered a thief. Right. Extortion. The Beir Rabbi Yanai, we're talking about a tax collector that appointed himself. He wasn't from the king. And even if it is a set amount, he's a strong guy, he just decides he's going to charge everyone tax because he's a powerful man. He's the head of the mafia. So that's considered a thief. Right? Even though he's giving everyone the same amount. Everyone has to pay, $250 to pass the toll. You're going to drive down the street that I live on.
It's a good example.
Right.
They privatize highways. That's why they got 1095 cents. You won't see tolls. But then they come up with the express.
So who owns the express line?
They
The
privatize
city.
it.
It's not the city that owns the
No,
express line.
they privatize it in order to charge you, which is like a turnpike. Turnpike, you have a toll every mile.
Uh-huh. Okay. The Beir Rabbi Yanai, okay. Some say that this discussion about Rav Chanina bar Kana or Shmuel that says that it's talking about a tax collector that has no limit how much he's taking, or Rabbi Yanai says that it's a tax collector that instated himself as the tax collector. So that they didn't say it on this halacha about getting change from him. They said it about a different case. It says a person shouldn't wear kalayim. That means a mixture of wool and linen. Even on top of 10 other clothing, in order to avoid the tax. This people do to get on the airplane. They charge you for the luggage. So remember we put on all the clothing. So, but if it's kalayim, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do it to avoid paying the tax. Mastis like Rabbi Akiva. This Mishnah doesn't fit with Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, no. This over here we said that it's only because of the kalayim. But if not for kalayim, it looks like you would be allowed to. But Rabbi Akiva says the Tanya also labriachas amechas. You're not allowed to avoid the tax. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Akiva mutal labriachas amechas. That you're allowed to avoid the tax. Now, why is it against Rabbi Akiva? It looks like it is like Rabbi Akiva. Looks like it fits like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, yeah, we'll see in a moment. But it looks like Rabbi Akiva holds that you're allowed to avoid the tax. And Vayibashan Kalayim, I feel like looks like, oh, maybe that halacha is that I get it. The halacha is the opposite. The halacha is that even though you're not wearing the clothing in order to have benefit, to give you warmth, you're only wearing the clothing because you're trying to avoid the tax. but that's still considered kalayim. In other words, he's setting it up that you're only doing it to avoid the tax, which that wouldn't be a problem to avoid the tax. No, so then again, it's mutter lavriach samach, and it fits with Rabbi Akiva. I know, but why is it masnisin like Rabbi Akiva? It's forbidden to wear. Shimon says the name of Rabbi Akiva. Oh, you have to adjust the brisa. It says no. 1 second. Also lavriach be'esamachas. Shimon said the name of Rabbi Akiva. It is permitted to wear kalayim. Oh, it is permitted to wear kalayim. He says clearly it's permitted to wear kalayim. That's what mutar lavriach be'esamachas means, that you have to throw into this kalayim. You're allowed to wear kalayim. It's not. It doesn't have to do with the tax. Oh boy, that's a different shot. Because you're not wearing it for benefit. You're wearing it only to avoid the tax. You're not really wearing it as a garment.
But that's a benefit. On the both, it is a benefit.
No, but it's not warmth. Nevertheless. Okay, we can understand what's going on by kalayim. The machlokes goes like this. One of them holds, Rabbi Akiva holds, you're not intending to get warmth from the garment. It happens to be maybe it's giving you warmth, but that's not your point. Your point is just to avoid paying for your tax, paying the tax. Marsaver, Davershin Miskaven, Aser. But and the other one holds that the Davershin Miskaven, that even though you don't intend for it, but it's still prohibited because you're actually getting the benefit, even though that wasn't your intention. But are you allowed to avoid the tax? That's another problem that no one mentioned. But Shmuel says, that the law of the land is the law. If that's the case, you're not allowed to do this anyway. Amar Chanina Barkana Shmuel. Barkana says, name of Shmuel, but we're talking about the tax collector that we were talking about before, where he doesn't have any limit how much he can collect. Rabbi Yana said that it's talking about the tax collector that is self-instated. Someone said it on the following. It says, Neijim, Lahargin, Lacharamim, Lamachsin, she shall chuma, she shall base a melech, half pishain shall chuma, pishain shall melech. Says that you're allowed to take a vow to murderers or to people that are plundering or to tax collectors. They can say, they're trying to confiscate property. You can tell them, if they're Jewish, let's say, that this would matter to them. You'd say that I'm taking a vow that I'm not going to have any benefit from anything or whatever, if that isn't truma, which means that you're swearing that that's truma, you're vowing that that's truma. Now it's not really truma, but you're allowed to lie. You're allowed to take a vow to save that and to do that. Now the problem is, you're allowed to do this to tax collectors. Why are you allowed to do that to a tax collector? Shmuel, Dina de Malchus Dina. Shmuel says that the law of land is the law. You have to pay the tax. Rav Kana said the name of Shmuel. Rav Chanina Bar Kana said the name of Shmuel. We're talking about a tax collector that he doesn't have any limit how much he can take. He makes money on the extra. Rabbi Yana said Me'elav is talking about a self-instated. Rashi Kanani. Ravashi says that it's talking about a non-Jewish tax collector, and the Tanya it goes like this: Thought in the Brisa, Yisrael v'Kanani anas shebo ladin. A Jewish person and a Kanani, that's a how do they translate the anas? It's a robber. They come to court. If, according to Jewish law, the Jewish person would be vindicated, right? So then Zakeo, then you vindicate him. We said that we judge them according to our laws, and that's that's the way we judge. B'dinei Kananim. But if according to the non-Jewish laws you could vindicate him, then Zikei of Amalei Kach Dinchem. He says you use the non-Jewish laws and you say that okay, he's innocent according to your laws. But if you can't do that, then Barnalav Bakifin. Then you do some sort of trick to make the Jew win. Rabbi Akiva Imer Ein Barnalav Bakifin Kiddush Hashem. Rabbi Akiva says we don't do that just to make we don't try to make him right because we have to make a Kiddush Hashem. We don't do any tricks. Okay, Rabbi Akiva time of the Kiddush Hashem. Why is Rabbi Akiva saying this? Because he's concerned about a Kiddush Hashem, making a sanctifying God's name. Like a Kiddush Hashem, then boy, does say like a Kiddush Hashem boy, then boy, which means we come on Bonala Bakifin. That means we'll come to him with the trick, some sort of claim to be able to conniving way to get to make him innocent. The problem is, v'gezel kanani mishari. Are we allowed to steal from a non-Jew? But Tanya, son in a brisa, Amar Rab Shimon, Davazeh Darsh Rabbi Kiva Kishaba Mizafirin. Rabbi Kiva taught when he came from Syria, Minayin Gezel Kanani Shuvalsha. How do you know that you're not allowed to steal from a non-Jew? Talmud Leimer, it says Achri Nimkar Gulatialai, that after if a Jewish slave is sold to a non-Jew, so then you have to buy him back. It says Gulatialai, you should redeem him, which means Shleim Shechena V'Yetzei. You can't just pull him out. You have to actually pay for him. Yachal Yiglaim Alav. Maybe you can. How do they translate Yiglaim? Is that what it means? Sounds like silence him somehow. Which means you have to work out with the one that purchased him. You have to work out the payment. Well, we see from this that you're not allowed to steal from a non-Jew. And there it looked like you were allowed to do tricks. Amar Rabbi Yosef like Kasha. Rabbi Yosef says it's not a question. The difference is if it's a Knani or a Ger Toshav, the Ger Toshav, the resident alien, he's the one that he doesn't worship idols, so that's a different story. Abaya says, but it says by both. It says by the Ger Toshav, and it also says by the Knani. It says the same thing. It says loy lach el leger. Right. This is referring to Shemitah, where it says over there that that if someone doesn't keep the laws of Shemitah, he's going to end up selling himself. He's going to not only send himself to a Jew, sell himself to a non-Jew, and he may even send himself to the idol itself to worship, not to worship, to clean or whatever, to do that. What does it say? Shenemar Lager, it's not referring to a convert. El Lager Toshav, it's referring to a resident alien. Shenemar Lager Toshav Mishpachas. Shenemar Lager Toshav Mishpachas Ger. When it says that, Ha'ovid Kechavim. K'shoimer Le'eker, when it says Le'eker Mishpachas Ger, it says Nimka Lavitz Kechavim. This is actually sold. If someone doesn't keep the Shemitah, it's going to end up being sold to a non-Jew himself. Okay. So we see that it doesn't matter. There has to be a payment for a non-Jew as well. It depends. When it comes to stealing, you're not allowed. When it comes to not paying back a debt, that's a different story. Abaya says that's not a good teretz. It's not a good answer because Eved Ivri Avkas al Vasi. Why was the Jew sold? Because he owed money. And who was he sold to? He was sold to a non-Jew. I mean, you can't just take him out. You have to pay for it. Big problem. Rabba Latamei, Rabba follows his reasoning, the Amar, that he says, the Amar Rava, Eved Ivri Gufi Kanei, that the Eved Ivri is acquired for 6 years, which means, what did they say in your commentary?
Does the Ivri retroactively go back after the
body of a Jewish servant is owned by his master for the duration of his term. Hence, in Rabbi's view, taking a Jewish servant from his master is actual robbery, not just the cancellation of the loan. Oh, so in other words, even though you just want to not have him pay back, but so you're just going to take him out of being a slave, but what's going to really happen is you're actually stealing him because he's owned by the master, even when the master is not Jewish. So you can't steal him out; you have to pay back. Well, let's leave it over here. We're holding Amar of Bibi. Amar of Bibi Bar Gidl, Amar of Shimon Chasida.
How would